What's up, guys? Welcome to the New to the Game podcast. This is Ben Schneider. I am here with my friend Christopher Olson. Is Christopher your full name?
Yeah, Christopher.
Sweet. Christopher Olson. This is Benjamin Schneider. We're using full names today. Today we're gonna do a super rapid fire episode because we wanted to talk about something that both Chris and I are like extremely passionate about, and I thought it would be a great let's just dive into it and dive right into something of this subject, which is, you've probably heard it before, like through Atomic Habits or those popular books that are really, really emphasizing the importance of that whole 1% better everyday mentality. And I really wanted to get into this one just because it's been such a meaningful and impactful part of my lifestyle over the past 2 years now, of being able to find those very marginal improvements that have exponential fruit the more that you prioritize stacking those on top of each other. So, Chris, when you think about the whole marginal improvements, the rule of marginal gain, or I think that's what's called, or the 1% better every day, what's your immediate gut reaction thought, and what is your rapid fire thoughts when you think about that subject?
I think my immediate thought is just, I love the way the concept works, because you think about the average person walking down the street. They think that they have to make these huge, big, rapid, massive improvements in order to get to where they want to be. And they don't realize that big change is really the cumulative effect of tiny adjustments, tiny movements in the right direction. You don't make it from 0 to 100 by going 0, 1, 2, 3, 100. You have to hit every one of those steps in between. And I think that that's one of the craziest things to me, is that people will straight up give up and make 0% change because they don't want to make all the small little adjustments and changes needed to get to the eventual big goal. It's a delayed gratification issue. People miss the boat because they don't realize that there's 20 little steps involved in taking one big step.
Yeah, that's so good, because it's just I don't know, it seems to be, it's an American mindset probably, or a modern day hustler mindset of they see the visuals of what rapid success looks like, and they're like, man, I want that so bad, because the perspective is really, more often than not, I feel like a lot of it has to do centered around ease. A lot of it has to be centered around simply just a completely wrong perspective. Because it's everyone always sees I heard it described freaking beautifully this morning. Actually, it was this morning. I was at a men's Bible study thing, and they were talking about developing maturity, and he used the example of tree rings, and how trees, no matter regardless of the size of the tree, you probably have heard that concept. I think it's generally speaking, the rough average is every year a new tree ring. So if you were to cut a tree down, you see the rings around the piece of lumber. You would see either a lot of rings, maybe a few rings, maybe so many rings that it's hard to even count. You go to a place like Sequoia National Park, and you see these trees that just have look like thousands of rings on it. And the interesting perspective of that is you see a tree, and if you were to sit there and just watch a tree for 4 days in a row, or a week, maybe 3 weeks, you probably wouldn't even be able to notice an ounce of gain. And you look at the trees that have grown, that have been 100 to 200 feet tall, and I mean, massive, wide trees, or even, again, smaller trees. We have a failed perspective of, we see the big tree and we're like, wow, I want to be that. That looks awesome. But we fail to acknowledge the fact that tree has been there for 400 years, and it's been growing for 400 years. And you would never notice the actual growth of that tree unless you had been most people say, oh, I planted this tree when I first moved in this house, and 30 years later, it's finally this pretty substantially sized tree. So going back to the tree ring perspective is, let's just use a pine tree, for example. You've probably heard that concept, especially within the construction space, that modern day wood is so much more structurally unsound than wood that was for homes that was built 100 years ago, because the trees were just more mature. So now you have this tree farming method that a tree, yeah, it may be able to grow super tall and super fast, but it's only got like 4 to 5 tree rings in it. So it's an extremely weak, structurally weak piece of wood. Whereas that tree that has been patient and that has taken the time to grow and mature the way that it really truly should, you look at the tree rings on that, they are so much more substantial because the ring is the strongest part of the tree. So the more rings you have stacked on top of each other, the stronger the tree itself. So the to bringing it back to that 1% improvement mentality is like, we want to be big trees. But if we are patient and we are willing to wait, not only can we grow tall, we can grow fast, we can grow, or not grow fast, but we can grow tall, we can grow wide, we can grow strong, but we can grow in a way, when I say strong, I mean in a way that you cannot be knocked over very easily. You are structurally sound. And so I love that, because for me, structural integrity as a person, as a business, is so critical. So to be able to have that marginal and willingness to be patient and wait for that marginal improvement, and to be able to see the marginal improvement at the very most granular scale, and start to actually recognize what those actions and behaviors of improvement look like at the very marginal level, I think is a recipe for someone who can be a year later a radically different person, not because they stacked a few big moments on top of each other, but because they stacked 100 tiny little improvements over time, and that's led to exponential improvement.
Yeah, and I think that that's one of the things that really, really, really hits home for me about this whole concept, is that it is exponential. It's 1% better every day is not 365% at the end of the year. And I think that's one of the things people miss, is people have this idea that, like, oh, you 1% better every day, 100 days later, you're at 100%. It's like, well, no, not really. But I think at the end of the day, you make these little tiny micro adjustments. You make these little tiny changes in your behavior, your routine, your mentality, your behavior, your attitude, whatever it is. And they all stack and compound and build with each other. And over time, you have these massive phases of growth that you look back and you're like, holy cow, how did I get from where I was 6 months ago, a year ago, 3 years ago to today? Like, it feels insane. But at the same time, it feels like not that much. And it's a really weird feeling.
It's like, the interesting part is, like, it's not, some people would say, like, oh, don't go fast because you want to go, you want to like the tortoise and the hare mentality of, like, not going too fast so you'll burn out or anything like that, which I think there's the underlying principle there is critical. Like, having to be able to set a set rhythm, a set pace for yourself is really, really important. But at the end of the day, I mean, yeah, 6 months to a year gain for a person that does the 1% better mentality and operates within that concept, by the end of 6 months to a year, it actually does appear like you've gone a very, very long way. Like, it is pretty substantial. And it's always a lot further than the person that went gung-ho and went crazy all out for a stretch, but then couldn't consistently maintain that level of grind or fortitude. And so, yeah, I mean, I don't want to make it sound as if, like, it's 1% better and ultimately you are going to get to this place where 50 years down the road, you're going to be in a super wealthy position or something like that. No, it's actually still pretty reasonable. By worldly perspectives, it's still extremely fast. But the difference is more that it's paced. And if you have that pace, you have that consistency, it is immensely, immensely powerful what you can be able to achieve through that. Contextually, to give you an actual concept of, like, exactly what this might look like in the business, it's like we talked about hiring a salesperson in my last podcast. The 1% improvement was not hiring the salesperson. The 1% improvement was making the decision. Like, it was probably one of the pieces of the parts of the decision that I decided on through the thinking process of if I was going to hire a salesperson or not. And then it was like, okay, what is the commission structure? So maybe one day it was building out the first piece of the commission structure. Maybe the next day it was building out the second piece. And it was kind of working on these, like, small, very, not even projects, like pieces of projects. And through that process, like, if I'm looking for improvements to my sales closing ratio, it could be something as granular and simple as, like, adjustment of the wording on my proposal. And that being that 1% thing that I did that day, that it's not going to have an effect on my closing ratio, maybe by like a fraction of a percent. But if I do 6 of those things stacked on top of each other, all of a sudden I might have a 2% increase in my closing ratio, which is a huge win. Yep. And when you look at big picture numbers, and then just think about that exponentially compounding.
Well, and that's one of the other things that I think think we kind of miss sometimes is that a 1% or 2% or 3% change when you're talking about something as big picture in your company or as an individual, like your closing rate. I mean, just like off the top of your head, what would be the actual difference in revenue at the end of the year if you had a 2% change in closing rate? Is that math you can do fairly easily?
I'm shooting for $3 million this year. So if it's $3 million company, that's $60,000. 2% is $60,000.
Not a little bit of money. That's a huge difference for 1 or 2%. Yeah. And I think that's one of the things people miss is they look at the big picture and they're like, oh, 1% is not that much. It's a lot. It's a lot. And if you think about what the entire concept, kind of wrap this up, of we're going to work on being 1% better every day. We're going to work on making that marginal gain, marginal adjustment 1% better. That's over time, over the next 3 months, 6 months, year, 3 years, 5 years. That's a lot.
The math is insane.
Mm-hmm. One of the things I definitely want to add before we close this out is I don't know whose quote it is originally. I know I've heard a handful of different people talk about it. Most recently, I think it was Hormozy on his podcast. But to kind of wrap this all up for you guys listening, there's a quote that I want to give you guys and leave you with. Most people severely underestimate or overestimate what they can get done over the next 10 years versus what they can get done in the next year. So most people underestimate what they can get done in the next year, and they overestimate what they can get done in the next 10 years.
Yeah.
And I think that what that means, to kind of elaborate just a little bit, is when you think about what do I want to get done in the next 3 months, 6 months, a year, most people underestimate what they can get done in that period of time. The amount you can get done in 3, 6, 9, 12 months of extreme focus is significantly more than you think it is. And I think where people think they're going to be in 10 years is significantly different than what they will actually do.
Yeah.
I think that we definitely need to think about those short-term massive shifts more than we're thinking about where we're going to be in 10, 15, 20 years.
Most people are distracted. And if they're distracted, they fail to be focused. And if they were focused, they would be like, if they just focused for a set period of time on a few things that were small improvements, but like really focused on improving those things, it would just think about what are the things that need the most improvement right now that would have the most immediate, like more, or we'll say monumental impact on your future. Focus on those things, like just singularly focus on those things, and do not divert from those things. Do not get distracted by the lofty goals. Do not get distracted by the other things you could improve. Mm-hmm. Just focus on those things. And it will be insane if you allow yourself, give yourself permission to be able to focus on these things and maybe deprioritize some of the other distractions. And then, focus on the marginal improvements, and it'll blow your mind. Chris and I both experience this. It's just insane. It's crazy when you experience it. It's so powerful, but so few people do it. And when you do it, it's incredible. I don't care how stupid you are on an IQ scale. If you just focus on a few things, it is insane what will happen. Just the bar is, it's incredible. It's incredible.
Yeah. There are a lot of really successful people that are not that smart. Yeah. And it's because they are really good at what we're talking about right now. They're really good about taking actionable steps every day to move the needle forward. Some of the most successful people I've ever met are honestly kind of dumb. And that's a reality that you learn when you come into the entrepreneurship business owner space. There are a lot of ridiculously, insanely successful people that will tell you straight up, I'm not that smart. I'm dumb. Like, they'll be totally upfront about it.
And they're not lying.
They're not lying. Like, it's not, they did not get to where they are because of their high IQ. They got to where they are because they don't give up. They are absolutely, without a doubt, motivated people. They make small adjustments and they make small changes and they implement it over and over and over and over and over and over and over until eventually one day you wake up and everything is shifted for the better.
Yeah, I love this episode, man.
Yeah.
All right, let's wrap it up because I know we gotta, you and I both have to get running. But
I was gonna say,
man, this is this is so good, and I think it's such an important subject. So I think it was a good one to be able to dive into pretty rapidly. But guys, thank you so much for listening. Please check out our school group. That is spelled SKOOL. Again, it's not something that we're trying to like turn into this massive thing or anything like that. We just want to create a community and a space where people can have the safety and honesty to be able to talk with each other, grow together, and be able to really seek out that aggressive improvement. So if you have any thoughts or any things you want to share, like we have conversations in that, and we want to be able to communicate with y'all pretty regularly. Beyond that, again, thank you for listening. Please subscribe to the podcast if you aren't subscribed to it. Give us a 5-star on Spotify. I don't care about the other platforms because I'm not on any of them. So please just subscribe. Just leave us a 5-star on Spotify, and I'll be thrilled about that. But we will be back soon talking about more things. And thank you all so much for listening. See you guys.